Hi everyone, welcome back. Today's review is going to be on the brand new Urban Decay Naked Cherry palette. I'm of course going to be going through 5 different looks, swatches, and giving you my full review and thoughts on this palette. Diving right into the packaging on the Naked Cherry, it is identical in structure to the Urban Decay Naked Heat, which is to say that it is a plastic packaging with a magnetic closure that keeps it shut. These kinds of Naked palettes used to have like a snap closure, but I much prefer the magnet. So of course you open your palette up and you've got all 12 shadows on the bottom. It does come with a dual-ended brush, but I'm not going to be talking about that today because it doesn't really have much impact on the palette for me. The shadows are arranged from light to dark, which is very visually appealing to me. I really like when eyeshadow palettes do this because I feel like it's more comprehensive in terms of putting a look together, so I really appreciate the fact that Urban Decay has stuck with going from light to dark. You of course have your mirror up top, and this is one of those palettes that's very flexible, but it'll actually hold the position. Wherever you put this thing, it will stay, which is very handy if you're going to set this up on your table in order to do your makeup. The price on the Urban Decay Naked Cherry is 66 Canadian, which has definitely crept up over the years. I feel like this used to be 52 Canadian when the original Urban Decay Naked palette launched, so they've definitely gone up in price tag. The American equivalent is 49 US. In terms of how much eyeshadow you're actually getting in this palette, they have decreased the amount of product that you're getting in the pans. The Naked Heat palette had 1.3 grams per shadow, which is roughly standard, but this one has dropped down to 1.1 grams of product. The pans don't look any different. They don't look any more shallow or smaller or anything like that, so I don't really know what's changed. Maybe the formula is now heavier in eyeshadows. I have no clue, but either way, while it looks the same, you are getting a little bit less per shadow compared to the Naked Heat palette. The back of the palette indicates that the brush is made in China, but that the eyeshadows are made in the USA with US and/or imported ingredients, and that it is assembled in the Dominican Republic. I'm going to slide in swatches of the palette right now so you can see how these look like swatched out on my arm.
I'm feeling so hollow, don't you know, don't you know.
Alright, now that you've seen the swatches, let's cover the shadows and my thoughts on this palette in depth. So the shadow quality is excellent. I feel like it's no different than any of the other Urban Decay Naked launches that they've had in recent years. It is much better than the original Naked palette. I like that palette, but the shadow quality is not as good as these ones are. I feel like Urban Decay has definitely changed their formula over the years and it's for the better now, especially because they're not really including any of those glitter eyeshadows that they have in previous palettes that usually end up being just an absolute mess. And I don't feel that way just about Urban Decay's glitter eyeshadows. I feel that way about pretty much every brand. I feel like the glitter never really actually sticks to your lid and always just falls down on your cheeks. So I'm really happy that they're not really including them in any recent launches. It wasn't in Naked Cherry and there was none in Naked Heat, so I'm really happy about that. I feel like the pigmentation of each shadow is there. I don't feel like there's any real huge discrepancies in formula between any of these colors, with one exception. This one here called Feels goes on the eye so much darker than I expected. When you look at that, it kind of looks like a medium pink with a hint of peach in it. It actually goes on the eyes as a little bit more of a brighter pink, which surprised me every single time that I used it because I tended to use it through my crease. That's where I have it right now. And I was always like, how is more color coming off than what I can see here? So that one was a little bit strange, but the rest of the colors are pretty much true to pan. What you see there is what you're gonna get. What I find a little bit disorienting about this palette is that some of these shades are positioned in here in locations that make you think that they're going to look like a different color than what they actually are. Specifically, Turn On right here. When you look at that on camera, that looks like pretty much the most shimmery, almost silver color in this palette, but that's because you're basing it on the other colors that you're looking at. When you actually use it on the lid, it's very pink, like very pink. It surprised me, and I put it all over the lid and I was like, that's not even remotely kind of like taupe silver that I was expecting, but that's because I was looking at it in comparison to the rest of the shadows. So this one looked like the most taupe. at the end of the day, it comes off very pink, so that's just something to be aware of. I do like that Urban Decay has included a ton of mattes in here. The Privacy shade over here, Devilish and Bang, I use those constantly in the outer corner to add some deepness and dimension. But I have to say, the tones in here aren't really that different that you're going to be getting a very much different look every time you use them. I mean, yes, this is a brown and this is more of a red, but fundamentally, they're very close in color, and depending on what color you put on the lid, they basically end up looking the same. So that is actually my major problem with this palette, is that much like with the Naked Heat palette, there's just not enough variety in this thing, and it drives me nuts. Urban Decay makes wonderful palettes. I love their Naked range, but they've started to go down this route of constantly making a palette based on a theme, and then the colors are just too much in that theme. They don't really kind of expand on the idea, and they kind of tunnel vision on like, well, this palette must be cherry based, so we're gonna stick with all the colors that sort of fit in that family and don't really provide anything that's complementary. And I keep saying cherry, but the other problem I have with this thing too is that this isn't cherry to me. I really like red eyeshadow, and to me, cherries are red, deep blood red too if they're really ripe, and then there's the occasional white cherry. At the end of the day, this is all very, very pink. Very pink. And every look that I created with this basically came off as like a pink look. And originally I thought that this was really similar to Naked 3 or like an amped up version of that. In hindsight, this is more pink tone than Naked 3 was, but I also don't feel like I needed another pink tone palette. If you compare the two between Naked Cherry and Naked 3, this one looks quite pink and the other one ends up looking quite taupe. But to me, this is still not really cherry. If I was going for a cherry palette, I want some true reds. There is no true red in here. The closest red is that Devilish shade, but again, it's just almost verging on brown that it never really comes across as red. What you're seeing on my eyes right now is pretty much the look that I created over and over and over again. I was trying to go for different colors and trying to like create variety, and I never really found like I got a ton out of this palette in that sense, much like Naked Heat. So in that respect, it's frustrating to me because I feel like in 12 Shadows, I should be able to derive more colors and more combinations than what I was able to create. And we're gonna get into the looks, so you're gonna see that I tried my best, but at the end of the day, most of the looks come out very similar to what I'm wearing right now. And man, did I ever try. So to back it up a little bit, I can acknowledge the fact that people are very into the Naked series of palettes, and I really was for a while too. But I think it's not necessarily a palette that works for me and how I do my makeup. I like to be inspired by a palette, and I want to look at a color combination that's provided to me and like come up with all kinds of different ideas. When I look at this, or when I look at the Naked Heat, you're pretty much funneled into one sort of specific look, and try as you might, even if you're using different color combinations, the looks are not going to be that different. So I think for somebody who wants something simple, this is the kind of palette you're gonna wanna go for, because if you like the tones in here and this is something you wanna wear all the time, have at it. This is the perfect kind of palette for you for every day, because you're pretty much gonna get the same sort of look every time, but you get to feel like you're trying new things. For me, that's not really how I like to work with my makeup, so it feels a bit redundant to go back to a palette like this when all of the looks look so similar to me. So it's more for somebody who doesn't necessarily want to have to think about their makeup every morning and just wants to slap it on, get a pretty look, and go out the door. I do really like the look that I came up with today, and I think it is the prettiest one out of all of the 5 that I created, but I don't think it's that different from look to look that it would warrant needing 12 shadows for me in this kind of palette. For me, this could have easily been cut down to about 6, and I could have gotten the exact same looks every single time, because some of these shadows, even though they look different, really don't look that different on the eyes. Bang Bang here and Turn On, basically the same thing on the eyes. Bang and Devilish, very, very similar. Devilish and Privacy basically end up looking identical, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because one is very brown and the other one's a little bit more red. Young Love I thought was fairly unique in this palette. It is a shimmery pink. It does look a little bit red in the pan, but it definitely comes across more pink on the lid. My favorite crease shade in here is Juicy, but it's nowhere in like the kind of cherry sort of color range. It's definitely a straight up peach. Okay, I've said my piece about the shadows. Let's take a closer look at the 5 looks that I created using this palette. The first look uses Juicy Through the Crease. That's my favorite transition color in this palette. It is very much a peach shade. And then I used Turn On the lid, and this is when I discovered that it is very pink and not at all kind of the more silvery color that I was expecting when you look at it in the pan. I used Devilish on the outer corner of the eye, and it's quite pretty, but I think you can see here that it's not really quite red. It is a little bit more on the pink brown side of things. I also used Hot Spot on the brow bone. For look number 2, I used Feels Through the Crease, and this is when I kind of discovered it goes a little bit more deeper than I was expecting. And then I put Ambitious on the lid. Really like this color, but again, with the tones, it doesn't look that different from the last look that I did. And then I've got Privacy on the outer corner, Bang Bang on the inner corner of the eye, and then Hot Spot on the brow bone. For look number 3, I used Juicy Through the Crease again, and I put Caution all over the lid. This one kind of surprised me. It looks really boring in the pan. It's like a beige gray, I don't know, it's a strange color, but it looked really nice on the lid. I then put Privacy on the outer corner and then Bang Bang on the inner corner with Hot Spot on the brow bone. I really wanted to make this look different, so that's why I stuck with all matte shades, because I wanted something that was just unique, because this whole palette ends up looking very same. I think this is the look that potentially pulls away from this palette and looks a little bit different. Look number 4 uses Feels Through the Crease, Young Love on the lid, and this color is gorgeous on the lid. It is so stunning. I put Drunk Dial on the outer half of the lid, and that was kind of interesting. It's shimmery, but it's deep enough that it actually works on the outer corner area. And then I also put Privacy on the outer V just to deepen it up a little bit because I didn't want it to be too shimmery. And then I put Hot Spot on the brow bone again. For today's look, I have Feels Through the Crease. I put Bang Bang on the lid just because I hadn't used it there yet. And it basically comes across as a pink, very similar to Turn On and very close to Ambitious as well. I also have Turn On the inner corner of the eye, and I think you can see me applying it here that it is really not that different from my lid shade. I don't feel like they needed both of these colors in this palette because they pretty much perform the exact same on the eyes. I used Bing on the outer corner, and I wanted to keep this actually pretty tame, so I didn't put anything else on the outer corner of my eye, and I think that actually helped to make this look a little bit different, because more often than not I kept trying to add more and more colors to all of these looks, and at the end of the day I think when you add too many colors on, it basically makes the shades all look the same, so I kept it pretty simple with this one. I also have Hot Spot on the brow bone, and then for the lower lash line I just replicated what's happening on my lid, which is to say that I put Bang Bang on the inner half of my lower lash line and then Bang on the outer half of the lower lash line. Of all the ones I did, I definitely think that this is the prettiest one that I came up with, but I think it's because I use less colors. I just wanted to not keep muddying the colors together, and I think that may just be a potential tip for this palette. Use less shades to get more impact, and I think you'll get a better result. Alright, so you've seen my swatches, you've heard my thoughts on each of the shadows, and you've seen my 5 looks with the Naked Cherry palette. So how do I really feel about this palette at the end of the day? I think it's good quality. I think you're getting your money's worth, and if the colors are what you want from an eyeshadow palette, then I think it is worth spending the money to get them. For me though, I really struggle with the fact that this is called Naked Cherry and they're pretty much all pink. I was so excited when they announced Naked Cherry. I was like, yes, a red palette from Urban Decay. I am so excited. And then I saw the colors in here and I was like, what happened? What happened, guys? Like, I really wanted this to be red, and that's what cherries are. They're not pink. So for me, it's just kind of like, why did you have to go and do that? I mean, the quality is good. I like the layout. I really like the Naked palettes, but the colors are just not for me. I was just thinking now, like, what could they have actually called this that would have made me happier? And I was just thinking, call it Naked Strawberry. And then I realized that strawberries are red too, but in how they're represented in makeup, they tend to be quite pink. So I'm not really sure if that works either. I just think Naked Cherry is really misleading for this palette. But yeah, I mean, the quality is there. If the shadows are something that you're interested in, definitely pick it up. But for me, it's not really what I'm going for. and I'm happy to have tried it out. I was sent this in PR, but it's not for me. Like, I wish they'd stuck with Cherry and made it more like my lip color. So that's gonna be it for my Urban Decay Naked Cherry palette review. Hopefully you found this helpful. I really want to hear your thoughts though. What is your take on the Naked Cherry palette? I think the term naked is kind of done at this point. These are not naked shades by any means, but I realize that the line of Naked products sells for Urban Decay, so they're going to continue to use that term in order to sell products. But yeah, let me know what you think about this palette. I'm curious about what you think about the term cherry in relation to this, and how you feel about the colors, because I feel for me, again, I've said this a few times now, but it's just too similar. And the looks that I created, try as I might, always looked very, very close to the last one, and it got really frustrating towards the end. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.